This is a Blairing Out with Eric Blair show, and today I'm here with indie punk singer-songwriter Louise Distras. Is this your first major tour of California?
It's my second time in the States. Yeah, I was here last year for 6 weeks with a amazing folk troubadour solo artist called Brian McPherson. He's from Boston, but he lives in LA. So yeah, we came over here, we toured the States from Boston right over to Los Angeles, and it was amazing, and I'm really, really happy to be back here in California.
What was your family life like growing up in your hometown of Wakefield?
Well, for anybody who hasn't heard of Wakefield, Wakefield is a town in the north of England. It was absolutely decimated in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher and her Conservative government. What they did was they took away the industry, they destroyed it, they took away the coal mines, the steel workers, and she tried to destroy the unions. So Wakefield is an ex-mining town, and coal mining was the industry. You know, and where a lot of people worked in Wakefield and the surrounding areas. So, I mean, the miners' strike and the decimation of the communities and the mines happened before I was born. But I grew up in the aftermath of what happened. And I grew up in a single-parent family. It was just me, my mum, and my brother, you know, just, you know, struggling to make ends meet, you know, living hand-to-mouth every single day. Yeah, so that's the kind of background I'm from.
So you became a survivor?
I guess so. I would like to think of it that way. I don't think it's good to think of myself as a victim, because I think if you think of yourself as a victim, you know, you can sometimes fall at the first hurdle in life. So it's good to think about surviving and celebrating the challenges that we've come through in life.
In spite of the fact that you don't allow it to define you anymore, you have said you got beaten up at school and bullied at home, and that you felt like a total reject that wasn't worth anything. What did that look like? How did you overcome it? And what advice would you give to those that are going through the same abuse?
Well, to me, you know, the world looked like a world that I didn't belong in. You know, all my life I was made to feel like a weirdo, you know, like an alien, and like you said, you know, like a reject. But the thing that really got me through those feelings of isolation and alienation, it was music. It was music that helped me find hope and helped me, you know, have faith in something for the first time in my life. And most importantly, it helped me to feel like I wasn't alone. And it was through music that I first realised that there was a way that I could express myself on my own terms, you know. And the first record that did that for me and made me feel that way was Bleach by Nirvana.
Now, what was it that about Nirvana's Bleach album that changed your life?
Well, I can't really put my finger on it, you know. It's like I was, you know, around 12 or 13 years old listening to it for the first time, and it was just something about it, you know, that resonated with me. You know, it sounded like how I felt and how I still feel. And it was through hearing Bleach by Nirvana that I was inspired to pick up a guitar and start writing songs and to express myself in that way.
What was it about Nirvana that made you feel like I want to pick up a guitar in spite of all the music that you had already grown up listening to?
I think it was the feeling of that music can change the world, and it changed my world. It was the first time that I didn't feel alone, so it helped me. It just helped me to feel inspired, you know.
So Kurt Cobain's words, you related to his words and his attitude in the music.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that drew you to it.
I think it was actually his voice. I think it was just how visceral his voice sounded, because I remember it's the song, there's two songs off Bleach that were my favourite songs, Paper Cuts and Floyd the Barber, and he's just, he's screaming from the absolute pit of his stomach, and it sounds like he's screaming from hellfire, you know. It sounds like pain, it sounds like trauma, it sounds like torture, it sounds like unhappiness, and that's how I felt when I was growing up.
How do you feel about comparisons to Joan Jett, Brody Daly, Courtney Love, Bob Dylan, and the Sex Pistols?
I mean, I suppose I can take them as a compliment, really, but I mean, I find that the music press likes to put women artists alongside each other and compare them to each other, and really the thing is that I mean, like I said, I'll take it as a compliment, but I don't really want to be like anybody. I just want to be like myself, you know. And going back to how Nirvana made me feel, they made me feel like I could be myself and create a world for myself on my own terms that nobody else could control. So it was just always a battle of having that space where I felt like I could just be myself and express myself and feel safe and feel accepted, you know, without fear of ridicule and without fear of being bullied and hated for who I am.
Out of all the punk luminaries you've shared the stage with, from Mick Jones of The Clash, Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols, the Buzzcocks and the Damned, who did you connect with the most?
Captain Sensible's a really nice guy. He's lovely. He made me feel really welcome at all the shows. Yeah, I really like Captain Sensible because he really believes in young artists and he really supports young artists, you know, and he understands that, you know, I mean, as much as they're all heroes, you know, and but, you know, they're not going to be around forever, you know, so it's up to the new generation to carry the torch, you know, and Captain's a big supporter of that and a big supporter of my music, so, yeah.
Say, Captain, say what? How do you feel about Sadiq Khan being elected the first Muslim mayor of London?
Well, I think it's a brilliant thing. I think it's always a brilliant thing when people who are underrepresented get a chance to be able to, you know, have that platform to be able to represent how a country or how a community actually truly is. So I think it's a really good thing. Yeah.
How do you think that you'll see London change?
Well, I mean, when Boris Johnson was the mayor of London, I mean, he was destroying everything. He was destroying all the music venues. He was destroying the arts, you know. Like in Britain now, it feels like the arts are for the upper classes. It feels like they're for people who have money, you know. Boris Johnson, you know, he took away one of the greatest live venues in London, which is this place called the 12 Bar on Denmark Street. And actually, myself and Ryan were talking about this earlier on in the car, and we were talking about how important it is to have these small venues and to have these grassroots venues that you know that inspire people to create and to put what they create out into the world, and to have people who are receptive to that and people who connect with that. You know, that's how a revolution starts. It's at the grassroots level, and he took that away. So I'm really hoping that the new mayor of London can bring that back to London, you know, and allow people like me, you know, to be able to have that platform, you know, once again.
Do you have any strong emotions towards anybody in the music business that, due to their art, political views, or published negative behavior, would cause you to avoid them? Besides me.
Well, I mean, I can tell you now, I don't actually really pay much attention to what's going on. I think that a lot of it's just a game, and the things that people write, you know, they write for part of a bigger agenda, you know, which is usually, you know, the purpose of that is usually to divide people, you know. And I wouldn't ever think that what somebody writes in a newspaper or is a true reflection of someone's character. I don't believe that, but really I don't really try to pay too much attention to it, you know, and try and get sucked down that wormhole, you know, because it's kind of, none of it's real anyway, so I just try and concentrate on doing what I'm doing and writing songs, you know, just writing the best songs that I can, really.
So you're going to embrace everybody?
You treat people how they treat you, and you have to take people on face value. How can you prejudge somebody that you've never met? You know, there's a lot of people out there that prejudge me and say nasty things about me, but you know, you don't know who people are, you don't know where they've come from, you don't know what struggle they've been through, you know. So I just think it's really unfair, you know. And sometimes people can be assholes, but they can also be geniuses as well. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. I mean, you know, as long as they're not some kind of like fascist and they're spreading hatred and they're not hurting people, then who cares?
As Louise Distras and her music becomes widely favored by the pop culture mainstream, how will you persist in waging war against the degenerative culture that's perpetuated by tabloid magazines, sexist marketing campaigns, and reality TV shows that celebrate bullying and prejudice?
I think the best way to go about it is just to purely just carry on being myself and writing the best songs that I can, really. I mean, I think we live in a world nowadays that's so safe and so apathetic and so homogenized that, you know, when you are being yourself, you know, that's actually the most radical act that there is nowadays. So,
what do you think of the fake political correctness that's happening in the world today?
Do you mean things like, if you don't agree with me and exactly what I say, you have to unfriend me on Facebook? Yeah, I don't really think that's a very good way to go about things.
Or I like Black Sabbath and you don't, so we need a space where I can go cry.
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems pretty lame. I mean, what happened to people being human beings and having conversations and working out their differences, you know? I mean, you know, the world nowadays is so disconnected. It's so disconnected, and we live in this world where it's a one-click society, you know? Everything just comes really, like, thick and fast at you, so you don't have time to think, you know? 1 minute this is happening, the next minute this is happening, and, you know, and it's all a distraction from what's going on, but it's a deliberate distraction from what's happening. It's there to distract people and divide people from what's happening. So I think it's just really important that people speak their minds about anything and everything wherever possible. And one thing that I feel quite strongly about is that there's a lot of people out there, and I'm guilty of feeling like this too, there's a lot of people out there who feel like in order to express themselves or speak their mind, they feel like they need to use like really super smart language, and that they've got to have a degree in politics or sociology or whatever to speak their mind. But at the end of the day, you know, it's how you feel inside, and it's the most important thing that there is, and everybody should never be afraid to, you know, be on the receiving end of ridicule, you know, for speaking their mind.
The Blairing Out Show.